All right, good morning, everybody. I'm Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Gualtieri, and I'm here this morning with St. Petersburg Police Chief Anthony Holloway. This past Saturday, Austin Kingos, whose booking photograph is here to my right, attempted to shoot and kill two St. Petersburg police officers. And we're here this morning to update you on the incident, and we will be releasing body camera and dash camera video of the shooting. But first, I'm going to provide you some background on Kingos and the events that led up to Saturday's shooting. This event exemplifies several things, including how fast situations escalate and how fast law enforcement officers have to react when someone decides that they want to kill a cop. It was about 29 seconds from the time that Officer McKenzie exited his cruiser until Kingos fired his gun at the officers. The situation also exemplifies the very significant and dangerous challenges that law enforcement officers face daily in dealing with people with mental illness. We're very fortunate because the outcome of the situation could be very different. We could easily be here talking about an officer killed in the line of duty because Kingos' bullet barely missed hitting Officer Pavel Kuznetsov in the head. It also demonstrates that professionalism, training, and agency culture matter. These officers' actions and reactions show that they are professionals who are well-trained and work for an agency with good policies and procedures, and that they acted in an exemplary manner to peacefully apprehend and provide medical treatment to Kingos even after he tried to shoot and kill him. This is how the absolute majority of the 800,000 law enforcement officers and the 18,000 law enforcement agencies act across this country every day, as professionals doing a very dangerous job who have to react in a split second to protect themselves and others. I hope that the video that you're going to see this morning is played as much as the videos are played when the road cop, who is the exception to the rule and not the norm, does something stupid and contrary to law, training, and the best practices of the agencies across this country. If we watch the continual loop of isolated incidents where cops do wrong, then let's watch a continual loop of how cops were attacked and reacted professionally to save their own lives. So by way of background, Kingos is 23 years old. He lives at 10790 3rd Street North in St. Pete, which is the area off of 4th Street just north of Gandy. According to interviews with family members, Kingos suffers from significant mental health issues, including bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, for which he is supposed to take medications and refrain from drug use. Kingos had been twice previously Baker acted, once in 2018 and once in 2019. Kingos had a minimal arrest record, and he had limited law enforcement contact between 2019 and early 2021. According to his family, what changed over the last few months is that Kingos stopped taking his medication and he resumed actively using marijuana. At the same time, over the last few months, Kingos became infatuated with a woman he met at a store in St. Petersburg that sells smoking supplies. Kingos met the woman at the store. Again, he became infatuated with her and met her to smoke marijuana a couple of times, but the woman wasn't interested in any additional relationship with him. Nevertheless, Kingos was insistent on a relationship and really became obsessed with her. He began sending her unwanted items at her home and began making comments that he wanted to have a child with her. He even had references to the woman tattooed on his hand. Because she was being stalked by Kingos, the woman obtained a stalking injunction, and that was served on him on June 15th of this year. The injunction prohibited Kingos from having any contact with the woman or from possessing guns. Between June 19th, so a few days after he was served with the injunction, and June 26th, Kingos violated the injunction several times by contacting the woman and having packages delivered to her home. The woman reported those injunction violations to the St. Petersburg Police Department, and officers developed probable cause to arrest Kingos on the misdemeanor charge of the violation of the injunction. St. Pete officers had been looking for Kingos for several days last week, but they were unable to find him. This past Saturday, Kingos again violated the injunction by having a package containing a breast milk pump and infant's clothes delivered to this woman's home. She contacted St. Pete Police again. The officers responded and again set out to try and find Kingos, and they located him in the area of 4th Street North and 108th Avenue as he was returning to his residence. Officer Ronald McKenzie observed Kingos driving a white work van as he entered the apartment complex, and Officer Pavel Kuznetsov responded as backup. Officer McKenzie pulled behind Kingos and effected a traffic stop as Kingos tried to back out of the apartment complex. Officer McKenzie was in full uniform, driving a marked police car with his lights fully activated. Officer McKenzie approached Kingos' van and he asked him for identification. Kingos did not immediately produce any ID, and he was fidgeting around, and Officer McKenzie was concerned because of the movements, and he couldn't see McKenzie's hands. Because he had probable cause to arrest Kingos and because he was concerned about those movements, Officer McKenzie opened the driver's side door, at which time Kingos turned and began to actively kick and resist Officer McKenzie. A struggle ensued between Officer McKenzie and Kingos, and during the struggle, Kingos reached into his waistband and removed a .40 caliber semi-automatic handgun and pointed it in Officer McKenzie's direction. At the same time as this was happening, is that Officer Kuznetsov arrived, parked his cruiser behind Officer McKenzie's cruiser, got out of the car, and was walking up to the van where Officer McKenzie was engaged with Kingos. As Officer Kuznetsov arrived at the driver's side door, Kingos fired a round, and as described by Officer Kuznetsov, it literally whizzed by his head. He said he could hear the round whiz by his head. It was that close. As that round whizzed by his head, it lodged in an apartment on the ground floor of one of the buildings behind him. The round actually struck the side of the building, went through the window, and went into the apartment, and it lodged in a door inside the apartment. If Officer Kuznetsov's head had been tilted slightly to the left, or he had taken one more step before he stopped, there's no doubt that he would have been shot in the head. After Kingos fired the round, Officer Kuznetsov moved out of the line of fire, and Kingos again pointed the gun out of the van and in the direction of both officers. Kingos' gun jammed, or he would have fired additional rounds. At that point, Officer McKenzie fired 7 rounds, striking Kingos in his left leg. Kingos then, after being shot in the leg, switched to the passenger side of the van, exited the van, and ran on foot northwest with the officers in foot pursuit. Kingos still had the gun in his hand, and the officers did not know that the gun had jammed. The officers gave Kingos verbal commands to stop, and at the intersection of 4th Street and 108th Avenue North, he put the gun down and got down on the ground where he was taken into custody. Kingos had been shot, as I said, in the left leg. Officers provided Kingos with first aid, including applying a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. Kingos was later treated and released from the hospital. He's currently in the Pinellas County Jail facing multiple charges, including attempted murder of a law enforcement officer. The investigation reveals that Kingos purchased this .40 caliber semi-automatic handgun in March of 2020 at a sporting goods store in Tampa. This is a case where the intersection of guns, drugs, and a person with mental health issues led to a very bad result, but one that could have been much worse, and we're very thankful that both officers were uninjured. What I'm going to do now is play for you the body camera and the dash camera video. You see here to my left is a picture of the gun, and that's the gun as it was on the ground when Kingos put it on the ground at 108th Avenue and 4th Street. As you'll see, this freeze frame to my left photograph is Kingos with a gun in his hand pointed it as he fired at Officer Kuznetsov, and it's from the video. It's a freeze frame from the video, and of course this photo is the booking photo of Kingos. So logistically, I'm going to step off to the side, and we're going to lower the screen. We'll play the video for you. The first video that you're going to see, and you're going to see it is one continuous sequence that we've merged together. And I'm going to let it play, but I'm going to set the stage for you. Is the first video that you're going to see is the dash camera video from Officer McKenzie. So Officer McKenzie gets into the parking lot of the complex, sees the van, pulls behind it. Kingos tries to back up as he's going to leave the complex. Officer McKenzie activates his lights, his emergency equipment. Kingos pulls forward and stops. It's at that point that Officer McKenzie gets out of his cruiser and approaches the van. And you'll see that, and you'll see the struggle that ensues from the dash cam perspective. And you'll also see from the dash cam perspective, Officer Kuznetsov come up, and you'll see him get shot at and move out of the way. Then once that video ends, it's immediately going to go into a side-by-side. The side-by-side on the left is going to be Officer McKenzie's body-worn camera video, and on the right is going to be Officer Kuznetsov's body-worn camera video. So the first is the dash camera, then a side-by-side with a body camera. The next thing you're going to see is we're taking that body-worn camera video and we slowed it down so you can really see exactly what unfolded. The audio, of course, in that third video, which is the slowed down, it's going to be distorted because it's all slowed down. Then the fourth one is going to be Officer Kuznetsov's dash camera. And that's going to show when Kingos goes from the driver's seat to the passenger seat, exits and runs. And then the last segment that's in there, the fifth clip that you're going to see, is back to the body camera, and it shows him running and being taken into custody. So that's the sequence. You'll see it, and then we'll take any questions that you have. So go ahead.
6 Hotel Delta X-ray 84. It's a white van. Four Bravo, copy tag. Hotel Delta X-ray 84. White van. Man, you got your ID?
Yeah, I got my ID on me. What's going on?
Let's get your ID.
Yeah, you mind me asking what's going on, sir?
Your name Austin?
I don't have the name right.
My name's Officer McKenzie with St. Petersburg Police Department.
Okay.
Austin?
Yes, and what is the issue?
Okay. Just need to talk to you.
Okay. All right, wait a second. I said, hey, stop. Hey, stop. Get the, hey, stop. Hey, I said, hey. What you got? Drop it. Stop. Drop it. Drop it. Drop the gun. Drop the gun. Shots fired. Shots fired. Shots fired.
Bravo to ED 51. That's directed. That's directed. 51 Bravo 2.
504. 504. Drop it. Get down on the ground. Down. I'm sorry. Put your hands on your back now. Now.
Stay rescue now. 10804. 115. I don't think so.
6 Bravo, officers are 10-4, 10-15.
So I said the outcome could have been very different. Very thankful, very fortunate that the officers were uninjured. I think the officers acted in an exemplary fashion, and it goes to show their training, their professionalism, and how they reacted through that entire incident shows the culture that they're in, which is a good one. And again, this happened in about 29 seconds. Very fast, and it shows the challenges that officers face every day. And mixing drugs, mental health issues, and guns is not a good thing, and this is a result. But again, we're very fortunate that Officer Kuznetsov and Officer McKenzie were not shot. As you can see, even after Kingo's fired the round that whizzed by, and I can't stress how close it came to hitting Officer Kuznetsov in the head, is he reached out again and tried to fire. But for that gun jamming, he would have fired several more rounds. And we, of course, don't know what that outcome would have been, but it may not have been good. So I'll turn it over to Chief Holloway if he wants to make any remarks, and then we'll take any questions that you have. Chief.
I want to thank the sheriff and the task force team for looking at this case and make sure that we did everything correctly. Every time I look at that tape, I just want to tell you, it makes you think. Everybody always says, the officer's a routine traffic stop. There is no such thing as a routine traffic stop. You saw what happened in that short period of time. I'm very happy that both of these officers are going home safely. I'm very proud of the way they acted on that day. So any questions for me also?
Does anybody have any questions?
How are the officers doing following this incident? Are they?
Chief can answer that.
Okay.
I spoke to both of them. I spoke to both of them this past week. That's a lot to go through. So we will make sure they get the assistance that they need, also with their families, and we'll take it one day at a time.
Were they hospitalized?
No, they were not. So they're both, the officer that fired the shot, he's being placed on paid administrative leave. The other officer, as soon as he's ready to come back to work, he can come back to work.
Did bullets pierce either of their bodies? Or it was just that one close call?
It just went by his head, close call. Neither officer was struck.
What would you have to say to people in the community who are worried about mental health and guns and?
Well, I'll say it, I guess, this way. I have been and still am very concerned about what we're doing and not doing in relationship to mental health treatment services, and especially case management. And then there's a lot of room to do better and to do more. And probably have been critical, and hopefully it's constructively critical, because I want to see it to be done better. And we really need more engagement, especially with case management. We need more front-end services. And I think that the direction that law enforcement is going in today in relationship with the mental health community is a good one. And we're trying to do more on the front end. St. Petersburg has a mental health program. The Sheriff's Office has a mental health program. But I say that to say this. In this case, from what I can tell right now, is that I don't know if there's anything that would have changed or could have been done differently. This is not a problem with the mental health system. And the reason I say that is because he had been diagnosed with significant mental health disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar. He was taking medication. He's being treated. And he had limited to no law enforcement contact for about a year and a half. And then so something happens and he stops taking his medication. and he starts smoking marijuana, and you put the two of them together, and the marijuana exacerbates it, and he goes off the deep end and engages in this conduct where he becomes infatuated with this woman, obsessed with this woman, and he bought the gun over a year ago. I don't think there's anything that anybody could have done about it. It's just a calamity, and things happen. This is not something because he wasn't, based upon his lack of activity, he wasn't susceptible to intervention by law enforcement. This wasn't a threat management issue. This wasn't where he was an opportunity to case manage him. Is that he just stopped taking his medication and it didn't get on anybody's radar. And sometimes, just bad things happen, and I think that this is one of those times.
And what specific charges is he facing now?
Well, there's a plethora of charges, and you can take a look at him. He's faced attempted murder of a law enforcement officer, the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, various counts of violations of the injunction. So there are several charges that that we arrested him on, and they're all listed, or we can get them to you. But of course, the most serious is the attempted murder of the police officers.
He was Baker Act twice, I guess. How was able to buy a gun?
Well, there was no problem with him buying a gun. When he went to buy that gun in March of last year, he's not a convicted felon. He's never been committed for mental health issues. And that's one of the things that people often mistake is that people think, and it's, it really is just a misperception and a misunderstanding, is that somebody being Baker acted, and he was Baker acted twice, is merely taking somebody into custody for an involuntary examination. It's an examination. After that period of examination, people are generally released. And that is not a determination of incapacity. It's not a commitment for mental health issues. The only time that anybody is disqualified from a gun purchase is if a court makes a determination that they are incapacitated due to a mental health issue. So the hundreds of thousands of people that are Baker acted annually in the state of Florida, and it's about 205,000 a year that are Baker acted, none of those disqualify somebody from a gun purchase. So it's a very, very small percentage that are actually committed and disqualified from a gun purchase. It's probably about 1%. So he is not a convicted felon. He had never been disqualified from a gun purchase. There was nothing that prohibited him from walking into that sporting goods store in Tampa and buying the gun.
In connection with his stalking injunction, though, he was told that he had to give up all his guns, and he testified under oath that he didn't have any guns.
Correct.
Do you have reason to believe that he lied under oath?
Well, of course. Because he had this gun, and when he was served, he would have been required to surrender his firearms or not possess firearms. And so, certainly he did, because we know he purchased the gun in March of 2020, which was a year ago. He served with the injunction here on the 15th of June, which was a couple weeks ago. And of course, this incident happened on Saturday, within 11 days of him being served. So I say the answer to that's, of course, he lied about it.
And does law enforcement have any way of tracking after an injunction of that kind is issued, whether the individual owns a gun? Can you go back and look at records?
So law enforcement agencies in the state of Florida are prohibited by law. We are prohibited by law from maintaining any lists of anybody that owns guns. So not only do we not have, but we can't. We're prohibited. So when somebody goes and buys a gun, is that there's no lists in Florida as to, you don't register guns, there's no lists. The only time that there's any record of anything is if someone has a concealed carry permit. And then we have access to that information as to whether they have a concealed carry permit and whether it's valid. But if somebody goes out today and goes to a local gun store or goes to a sporting goods store and buys 5 guns, we have no way of knowing that. Nobody will ever know that, and that's the law in the state of Florida.
Sheriff, what's your reaction, just watching that video from beginning to end, seeing the actions he took, but then hearing at the end him saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry?
It's mixed. I mean, obviously, to me, watching all that leaves a knot in my gut because this could have been a very different outcome. It could very easily, we could be standing here talking about a line of duty death for a police officer. And this is as close as it gets, and it's bad. To now know more about him, to know more about the situation, he's accountable for his actions. He needs to be held accountable for his actions. And the fact that he said what he said afterward, I think that's where I get mixed about it, because the guy's got serious mental health issues. And, you know, he wasn't acting this way while he was taking his medications. And, you know, of course, it begs the question, why did he stop taking his medications? Why did he get back into using marijuana? But it probably comes back full circle because he's got mental health issues and he's got all kinds of problems. Just because he said he's sorry doesn't excuse it. And he needs to be held accountable for his actions. And he needs to face the consequences that the criminal justice system mets out. He tried to kill 2 cops. 2 guys that came to work, trying to do the right thing, trying to protect the community, who very, very easily Saturday night could have not gone home. So he is responsible for and needs to be held accountable for his actions, regardless of what he says he's sorry or not. You know, there's minimum mandatories that come into play when you use a firearm in the commission of a felony, when you attempt to kill a cop, and he needs to go to prison for a long time. And I hope he gets treatment, and I hope he gets where he needs to be, but he almost killed 2 cops in this county, and he needs to be accountable for that.
I have a question for both of you, if that's okay. So you had said that 205,000 people are Baker active in Florida every year, and probably 1% of those are prohibited from having a gun. Do you think something needs to change? If so, what do you think there should be stricter gun laws?
There's no perfect when it comes to this. You know, the Second Amendment's important. Gun rights are important. They're not unlimited. There has to be balances on it. You know, it's a very tough issue. One of the things that I know is that it's a people problem, and people need to be responsible for their actions. You know, there's debate on both sides of this. There has been forever, and there will be in perpetuity. This is one of those issues that has been around, will always be around, and there will always be disagreement on it, and there's no perfect answer to it.
And I'll just add on it, like the sheriff said, Second Amendment, it's very important. But again, it's a people's problem. The gun didn't fire, the person fired the gun, and you need to address that issue first.
Is there any way that you think, I know we heard from the sheriff a little bit, but how, I know you guys have at St. Pete Police Department the mental health program that's in place. Do you think that there's anything else that needs to be done, anything moving forward?
Again, I think you just have to look at the laws and just keep, you know, chip at it little by little. But again, people have a right to bear arms, but also, do we need to work with people who have mental issues? Yes. So it's just going to take one step at a time for us to get there.
All right. Anything else? Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.